When it comes to Dragon Age 2, for me personally, I've always seen it as more of a stepping stone as opposed to it being its own standalone experience. Because like I mentioned in the Overdue review for Dragon Age Origins, I initially played through the entire franchise 10 years ago, going from Dragon Age Origins into Dragon Age 2 straight into Dragon Age Inquisition. And in playing the games in such quick succession like that, it made it so that Dragon Age 2 sort of felt like that awkward middle child. When it came to Dragon Age 2, it was very much just, let's get through this to get through Dragon Age Inquisition, the new hotness at the time. And because of that, Dragon Age 2, I never really gave much thought to. And in a lot of ways, it did strip back a lot of what made Dragon Age Origins unique and special. But having recently just replayed it in 2024, leading into Dragon Age The Veilguard, with a lot more time than I had in between it and Inquisition 10 years ago, I was able to exist longer in this game world and really give it a fair shake this time. And now 10 years later, I have replayed Dragon Age 2. My thoughts on the game may shock you. So please, sit back and relax, because this is the Overdue review for Dragon Age 2. And of course, if you aren't familiar with the Overdue review is two things. The first part of the video is me talking about Dragon Age 2 as if I am just reviewing it. The second half, however, will be me going more in depth about the story spoilers and the choices I made in this playthrough. Because hey, this is a role-playing game with lots of choices, so if you are a fan of it, I'm sure you're curious to know how other people played it, and maybe you just want more discussion on what may be one of your favorite games. With all that out of the way, let's jump straight into the Overdue review for Dragon Age 2. So I can't really talk about Dragon Age 2 without first addressing the elephant in the room. During the development of Dragon Age 2, Bioware was met with ridiculous deadlines, which resulted in the game having less than 2 years of development time, which, isn't very much time to develop a sequel to an RPG as massive as Dragon Age Origins was. And despite that fact, I would still argue that Dragon Age 2 improves on all of my issues I had with Dragon Age Origins and excels in the parts that I would want an RPG to excel in. Of course, that 2-year development time still does have very obvious and notable drawbacks that are very hard to ignore, with things like dungeons and caves having the same exact layout all throughout your playthrough. They just didn't have enough time to make individual things all handcrafted like that. But like I said, I still think that the game excels in where it needs to excel, and that is in its story, and it improves upon Dragon Age Origins' biggest failure in my eyes, which was the combat. But let's start things off with the story of Dragon Age 2, which in terms of scale is a lot smaller than Dragon Age Origins, which I'd imagine has a lot to do with that 2-year development time, where Dragon Age Origins was more expansive and had to explore an entire kingdom. Dragon Age 2 was very much so just one city and its surrounding areas. The way that Dragon Age 2 starts is not something I remembered at all at the time 10 years ago when I first played Dragon Age 2. Which is shocking since I played these games back to back 10 years ago and I'm playing them back to back now. It's that Dragon Age 2 starts in pretty much the same place that Dragon Age Origins starts, where the 5th Blight has started, and instead of being a Grey Warden defending Ferelden against such an attack, you are just an everyday citizen of Ferelden who is escaping, who is fleeing the country because it's really bad and your whole hometown has been razed to hell because the Darkspawn are attacking. And something unique that the Dragon Age franchise does compared to BioWare's Mass Effect series is you aren't playing as Shepard for the entire franchise, for multiple games in a row. With Dragon Age, you are not only playing as the Grey Warden, you are also playing as a character, Hawk, too. Laugh now, please. And Hawk is, like I mentioned, a citizen of Ferelden who is fleeing the Blight as it's really bad. It's a bad time. You saw the effects of the Blight during the events of Dragon Age Origins, and now you are being personally affected by it with this new player character of Hawk. And the thing about Hawk is that compared to Dragon Age Origins, you aren't creating your own origin. Your origin is set in stone already for you. Hawk already has their whole backstory, and instead of creating Hawk's backstory for your character, you are more so focused on creating Hawk's future. And with Hawk being a pre-established character in Dragon Age, you are stuck to being just a human, which I'm sure a lot of people took issue with, but me personally, I very much enjoy Hawk as a character. And very big difference compared to Origins, you're fully voiced in this game, which is awesome because I didn't realize how much I missed it, having a voiced character. Well, the story is very simple. You are fleeing the Blight and you end up heading north to a city called Kirkwall, and this is the city where the game takes place. Pretty much the entirety of this city and its surrounding areas. And because this game is a lot smaller in scale, I do feel like it allows the story and characters to be more focused and more fleshed out than they were in Dragon Age Origins, which I feel like is the thing I come to these games for. And because it all takes place in this one city and you aren't zipping around the entire country, you are more so seeing direct effects that you have had on this city over time. Whereas Dragon Age Origins, you would just go from the Daily Shelves to the Dwarves to the Circle of Magi, and nothing really felt connected in that way. By grounding the entire game story in Kirkwall, in the people who live in Kirkwall, you see more directly the things that you are doing and what the effects they have on the city. And I know that I keep comparing it to Dragon Age Origins, which, I mean, how could I not? It is the direct sequel after all. Compared to Dragon Age Origins, I would say that it handles companions a lot better, which isn't to knock the companions of Dragon Age Origins. You all know I love them. You saw the Overdue review for Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age 2's companions, I think, are the best of the franchise. I haven't talked about Dragon Age Inquisition yet. That'll be next week, but I have things to say on them. But overall, when it comes to the franchise of Dragon Age so far, I would say that the companions in Dragon Age 2 are the best and the most fleshed out because they are actually involved directly in the story. Looking back on the companions in Dragon Age Origins, they were more so along for the ride. And one or two of them would occasionally be like, hey, if you get me pregnant, I can save your life. Or hey, maybe I'm actually the king of Ferelden. One or two companions would have quest lines of consequence like that. But when it came to Dragon Age 2, just about every companion I had directly played into the overall narrative of the game in some way or another, which I really, really adored. With characters like Varric making their first appearance, who we all know and love, or Meryl, who I don't remember at all, because like I said, I have the worst memory of this game, I would say. And Meryl's just a sweetheart who I very much enjoyed being around, whose personality was awesome. And Isabella, Isabella, what a surprise Isabella was. I have so much to say about Isabella because she's the MVP for Dragon Age 2. But pretty much all of what I have to say about Isabella deals with spoilers. So we'll come back to that in the second part of this video. But Isabella is really, really awesome. And I didn't remember her being as awesome as she is. She's just, God, I can't. Time codes if you want to skip ahead, because I want to get into it. I want to skip ahead, but I'm the one recording it, so I can't skip ahead. The companions in this game felt more consequential to the overall plot than they did in Dragon Age Origins. And because they were a part of the main story, their quest lines were a lot more fleshed out. They weren't just, hey, go find my sword. You know what I mean? As much as I loved Sten, don't get me wrong, I just felt like the companions were better, well done in this game. And like I've mentioned already, because this game takes place entirely in one city, you are spending so much more time with these characters because everyone lives here. This is where everyone lives. So we're all just hanging out all the time. And it really just feels like you're a close-knit group of people who don't always get along, and yet you guys stick together, which I just really love and adore in games where, despite having disagreements and arguments and in a lot of ways different views, this group sticks together. And to me, that makes it feel more like a family than a bunch of people brought together by circumstance. And Dragon Age 2 improves upon Dragon Age Origins' biggest flaw, which is the combat system, which is so much better here. The combat system in Dragon Age 2 is a lot more active, where instead of just tapping A and you start hacking at enemies, every tap of the A button is another swing of your sword, which sounds so minuscule, but it really helps to make the game feel more active, and the pace is so much faster. You aren't missing half of your attacks, and all of your abilities feel more weighty. And in a lot of ways, it reminds me of the combat of a Diablo game, just from a behind the back perspective instead of an isometric perspective. The only difference, of course, being that the cooldowns in Dragon Age 2 are way too long. If those cooldowns were a lot shorter, it would be a lot tighter combat-wise. Coming directly off of playing Dragon Age Origins into this game, it was such a welcome, fresh breath of air. And to throw a few flowers Isabella's way, I really loved Isabella's gameplay, which went a long way into crowning her as the MVP of Dragon Age 2. Her combat style was just so good. I ended up playing a warrior this time around because I always envisioned Hawke as a warrior character with a big massive sword, so that's how I played her, despite usually playing a rogue in all of these sort of RPGs. But I ended up gravitating towards Isabella's gameplay because that's what I enjoy most in these games. And she was dominating the battlefield like crazy. Despite Hawke having a massive sword, I really felt like Isabella was dealing the most damage, which made the combat overall just feel so much faster because Isabella moves so much faster than other characters do, and it's just so quick. And I also love a very small thing that I love in all video games is when you upgrade your health bar and the actual bar gets bigger. Just a little thing that I just love in any video game. Kingdom Hearts is where that love started, and if your game does that, I'm automatically gonna love it more than other games who don't. One of the best things that Dragon Age 2 has going for it is the fact that it is a sequel to Dragon Age Origins, a game that was already so great and did a lot of heavy lifting for world building in the first entry of a franchise. So much so that there was so much material already there, the foundation was laid with Dragon Age Origins, that Dragon Age 2 was able to take and expand upon so many times over. With something like the Mage versus Templar dilemma that was only hinted at in Dragon Age Origins, in Dragon Age 2 it is expanded upon to become the entire story of the game. And it's things like that that really make this game shine. Where in a lot of ways you would look at this game and its story and maybe think of it as a spin-off of Dragon Age rather than a direct sequel. It is also pretty weird to think that Dragon Age 2 is the only game in the franchise to actually have a number in the title, as if it is the direct sequel to Origins, but it is very much a different style. Where Dragon Age Origins feels more like that big bombastic movie, Dragon Age 2 feels more like a season or two of TV. In not being as bombastic of an adventure as Dragon Age Origins, I feel like it takes its time more. And you aren't just going from spectacle to spectacle, you are more so living. You are just existing in Kirkwall, which I truly adored in this game. You just feel like an actual character in this world who is existing, and not that the entire world rests on your shoulders. So now for that big controversial statement that I said I was going to likely make. When it comes to directly comparing Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Origins, I prefer Dragon Age 2. And it is because I prefer story and character when it comes to RPGs. And Dragon Age 2 does that way better, I think, than Dragon Age Origins. where the characters in your party are directly linked to a lot of these big story choices. So you caring for your party members would actually affect what you would choose in the story, where I never felt that in Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age 2 just has that perfect blend of story and character that I want most from RPGs. So if I were to rank them, yeah, I would put Dragon Age 2 over Dragon Age Origins, and I am sure that a lot of people disagree. I don't think that is the common consensus when it comes to these two games in particular, but for me, that's how I would rank them. And I can't really say too much more about this game without spoiling things, and I know this is a 13-year-old game, but like I've mentioned in the Overdue review for Dragon Age Origins, there might be a lot of newcomers to the franchise who I don't want to spoil the game for. But if you've already played it several times over, like I'm sure you have, feel free to stick around as we go into story spoilers and talk about all of these choices I made and all of these companions, because I tell you what, compared to Dragon Age Origins, it's a lot harder to talk about Dragon Age 2 without spoiling things. So let's get right into this full-on story spoiler discussion for Dragon Age 2. The great thing about Dragon Age 2 that I have already mentioned several times over by now is that the main story of the game does a very good job at involving your companions along the way. So that's really going to help streamline this segment of the Overdue review, because I'm not going to have to divert too much away from the main plot when I'm going to talk about specific companions. Most of them, their big moments happen in the main story, so it should just flow together as I talk all the way through this story. And like I brought up during the review section, Dragon Age 2 starts off very close to where Dragon Age Origins starts, with the beginning of the 5th Blight, except you are fleeing instead of joining the fight against the Darkspawn. And Flemeth is there, she helps you escape. It's wild. She's like, hey, it's me, I'm Oregon's mom. Deliver this amulet and I'll help you escape Ferelden. Great deal. I'm like, all right, no problem. We do that. And also, we are very, very quickly introduced to probably my least favorite aspect of this game, which is that you aren't actually playing this game in real time. You are experiencing the story through the lens of Varric Tethris, our favorite dwarf in Dragon Age, who is telling the story to Cassandra, a seeker who works for the Chantry. For some unknown reason to the player at this given moment, the Chantry is looking for Hawke, and Varric has dealt with Hawke a lot in the past. And so Cassandra is questioning Varric in hopes to find out more about Hawke and where she may be. And I tend not to really like that sort of narrative device in stories in general, but it doesn't get too in the way of telling the story of Dragon Age 2. It's just in between acts, you'll come back to Varric and he'll set up the next time jump, because there are various time jumps all throughout the story, which I believe sees the game taking place over the span of 7 years? But yes, you escape north to Kirkwall with the help of Morgan's mother, Flemeth, and luckily for you, your mother, who you're also escaping with, is from Kirkwall, one of the richer houses in Kirkwall. So while a lot of people are being turned away at the gates, you guys are allowed entry, but you quickly discover that your uncle has gambled away the Amel family fortune, and you are stuck in the service of one of these smaller guilds to earn your way into the city. With your family's fortune gone, you are pretty much coming up from nothing. And Act 1 of this story just seems so small and quaint, and honestly it feels a little bit aimless because there's no real stakes happening or anything is really happening. The whole goal of Act 1 is to earn enough money to buy into this partnership that will get you more money. It's all about getting money. The partnership in question, of course, is this Deep Roads exposition that is headed up by Bartrand Tethris, who is, of course, the brother of one Varric Tethris, who is our first companion outside of Hawke's own sister, or brother, depending on what class you play, which is something I was very much unaware of when it came to this game. I always thought Bethany was the character who would come with you no matter what, and Carver would always die, because it turns out in all of my time playing Dragon Age 2 and replaying the demo for Dragon Age 2 over 10 years ago, I never played as a Mage Hawk. And apparently the Mage Hawk is the default canon Hawk, which I didn't know. Fascinating. But yeah, if you play as a mage, then Bethany will die on the way out of Ferelden. But if you play as a rogue or a warrior, then your brother Carver will die on the way out. Either way, you are left with one sibling. And in hindsight, this is one of the earliest parts in the game where you realize, oh, this is what they're setting up. After having played through it, you realize, oh, the whole conundrum for this game essentially is the mage versus Templar dilemma. And we very much see that highlighted with Hawk's sister Bethany, who is a mage, who isn't a part of the circle and is trying to stay hidden from the Templars. And it's the little interactions you'll have with her in Act 1 that really build up the fear of Templars that you understand the mages to have. And you feel it more personally because this is your own sister that is being threatened by the presence of the Templars. And of course, if you played as a Mage Hawk, I'm sure that feels very differently, which I am fascinated about. I would be curious to have a playthrough of Dragon Age 2 as a mage, just to see how different that is, how it's possible for a mage to become the champion of Kirkwall. Sounds like a very interesting, a very different lens to play the game through. One that I'm very interested in. Let me know in the comments below how that goes, if that's how you played. I'm curious. Although I don't know if I could bear playing the game without Bethany, because I just prefer Bethany. And I always thought Carver died, so I don't really care about Carver whatsoever. And I love Bethany. She's great. In Act 1, you do spend a long time just trying to gather up coin so that you can buy into this Deep Roads exposition as a partner. And it takes a while. So much so that I didn't record everything, which I do regret in hindsight, because I didn't realize that all of the what I thought were side quests at the time were actually main quests and would have ramifications going forward. I didn't get any of that footage because I thought I was just doing some side quests, and it turns out I wasn't. But yeah, you essentially go on several quests which involve you finding the rest of the party members that will accompany you throughout the journey, and it sets up more tension between Templars and mages, things like that. But it's not really highlighted in a very direct sense. It's more very low-key, and it's just like, man, things kind of suck for the mages. But this is the norm, so they'll get past it, sort of thing. But we might as well go through these companions who we do recruit during this segment. And I am going to go ahead and correct myself from a statement I already said earlier. Varric is not the first companion you get outside of your own sister. Aveline is, who is also in the prologue of Ferelden. Once you get to Kirkwall, she very quickly establishes herself there as captain of the guard, which is just amazing. Good for her. What a rise, you know? And we also find Isabella, who is my MVP. We'll circle back to why she's the MVP when we get to her involvement in the main story. We also meet Anders, the Grey Warden, who you can also meet in Dragon Age Awakening. But I didn't really play it. I only played like an hour of it because I was kind of tired of the combat. But I did meet Anders, and I was like, oh snap, I didn't know you were in Dragon Age Awakening. That's pretty cool. And now he's here. And he also has a freaking demon inside of him. The spirit of vengeance. Not like Ghost Rider, but the demon called Justice, or the spirit called Justice. I'll be real with you, I don't remember if it was a demon or a spirit. Maybe there's no difference between those two things. Maybe I'm overthinking it. We also find Meryl, who is a Dalish elf who dabbles in the blood magic, you know, a little bit here and there. And she's just so fun. She's so bubbly. I love her personality. She's just very wide-eyed and curious about the world, and it's adorable. And it is during her recruitment quest, I suppose we'll call it, where we do fulfill our promise to Flemeth and deliver this amulet to the top of this mountain. And I didn't really seek further clarification on this, but I'm pretty sure we just revived Flemeth, because if you recall, in Dragon Age Origins, we killed her. We killed her dead. And then a year had passed until this point, and now we're delivering this amulet, and suddenly she's here again. So it's pretty funny to think that in Dragon Age Origins, I worked so hard to kill her. I didn't work that hard. It's kind of easy. But in Dragon Age 2, Hawk just goes out and revives her. So that's pretty cool. And now she's back in the world. She doesn't ever show up again in this game, but hey, you know, there is a sequel after this game, so who knows? It's called foreshadowing. And there's also Sebastian, who's a DLC companion who I didn't have because I didn't have the DLC on the Xbox 360 version. Didn't realize that that was a big deal. My bad. But beyond him, that will be your entire party. These are the people who you'll come to know all throughout the game and will evolve all throughout the game. Like I said, this game takes place over the course of 7 years, and depending on your choices within those 7 years, these companions of yours may have very different stories. Oh, and something I didn't realize until the credits rolled right towards the end of the game, where they closed the book on the champion of Kirkwall or whatever it was. They showed all of your companions in little minimalistic painting sort of things. And I realized I never got that guy. Yeah. I looked it up after the fact because I saw his picture in this book and I was like, oh snap. I remember seeing pictures of that guy online. People talk about him. Fenris, this guy. Never met him. I don't know how I missed him, but I completely missed him, which kind of sucks. I'll be real with you. I'm not going to lie. But I didn't know I missed him until the very end of the game, so it's not like I was going to go back all the way to Act 1 to get him and then play the whole game again. That would take way too long. But I never met him. I don't know what his deal is. People seem to like him, and it sucks. I never saw him. I didn't see him. I don't know how that happened. And it really sucks because the whole reason I'm replaying these games is to get the most story I can from all of them, since it's been over 10 years and the Veilguard is right around the corner. So I was like, let me refamiliarize myself with everything. And then I completely missed a whole companion that people really love and apparently has ties to the Tevinter Imperium, and you know, the Veilguard's gonna deal with some of that. So I might be missing on some ties, but you know, it is what it is. Anyways, now that we have all of the companions, let's go ahead and go into the Deep Roads expedition. But before you go into the Deep Roads, you must decide whether you take Bethany with you or leave Bethany at home. And I'm not gonna lie, I googled it because I remember that Bethany can have some really bad times depending on your choices. And I was like, I kind of want her to have the best outcome. Let me just go to google.com, type it in, see what happens. So I left her at home. Because if you bring her with you, she could potentially get infected with the blight from a darkspawn. And if you don't have Anders with you, she will die. And if you do have Anders with you, she can join the Grey Wardens. It's a whole thing. And I was like, I don't want that for her. So stay home. So we go down into the Deep Roads. And it's a great time, you know, just exploring, going on an expedition, going deeper and deeper, fighting darkspawn that show up. And eventually we come across this artifact, this red glowing artifact. We're like, what is this thing? This thing's so fascinating. I've never seen anything quite like it before. And then Bartran's like, oh, I'll hold on to this. Don't worry about it. You guys keep looking for stuff. And then he locks the door behind us, and then we're trapped down there, and then it's a whole thing. So we have to find an alternative way out, and by the time we come back up to the surface, Bartrand is nowhere to be found, that artifact is nowhere to be found, and I return home to find this dickhead, Cullen. Remember this dude from Dragon Age Origins? Back then, how much I disliked him. Now he's followed me across the world to Kirkwall just to torment me some more. He's over here like, I'm a Templar. I gotta take your sister in because she's an unregistered mage. She's gonna join the circle here in Kirkwall. It's just like, this little bitch. I hate Cullen so much in this game. I'll come back to him more towards the end of this game, but I'll say it. Cullen is the LVP of Dragon Age 2, the least valuable player. I know he's not a companion. Being the LVP or MVP doesn't mean you're a companion. It just means you are a person who sucks the most. Or if you're the MVP, the person who rocks the most. But Cullen, you fucking suck. I hate your guts, dude. And I'll talk a lot more about why I hate you at the end of the game. It's crazy. This dude sucks so much. God, it's just like, I really thought we were done with him by the end of Dragon Age Origins, but here we are. Here we are. And after we return from the Deep Roads, we have our first time jump, which leads us into Act 2, where the Quinari are really making their presence known. They were also around during Act 1, but it's really in Act 2 where everything that they've got going on really takes the forefront of the story. We do a lot of things to help the governing bodies of Kirkwall try to make peace with the Quinari, and in hopes of keeping the peace between Kirkwall and the Quinari, we go talk to the Arashok, who's the leader of this troop of Quinari, and we do a lot of work for him and help him solve some of his issues with the people of Kirkwall and vice versa. We do a lot of helping both sides here because we don't want an all-out war to happen between these two factions of Kirkwall and the Quinari, because that would be pretty bad. And during this whole back and forth between Kirkwall and the Quinari, there are rumors of a serial killer who is prowling the streets of Kirkwall. And it doesn't seem like much at first. We follow a few leads here and there, and we come up with nothing. We never really find the guy, and it's just like, oh, okay. I guess nothing much happened there. Until we return home one night. After the Deep Roads expedition, Hawk has really been able to raise their status in life with more money, and they just have a nicer house, and it's great. It's really great. Things are really looking up for Hawk until we can't seem to find our mother. We discover that our mother was the next target of the serial killer, and we were too late to stop them. And it's dark. It's so incredibly dark. Just out of nowhere, you are blindsided with brutal mutilation of your mother, essentially. The whole thing with this serial killer is that they are trying to recreate Andraste herself by using different body parts of different women in Kirkwall, and then using blood magic to resurrect Andraste in a sort of twisted way. And it's just such a slap in the face when this happens. It just comes out of nowhere almost, and it's just like, whoa, why is this so dark? It's wild. It's honestly probably the darkest thing to happen in Dragon Age. If you disagree, let me know what you think was the darkest thing to happen in Dragon Age in the comments below. After that, tensions between the Quinari and Kirkwall, they don't work out. They never do. Things like this never work out. Where the Arashok leading the Quinari is always talking about how soft the people of Kirkwall are and how much complaining we do over the smallest things. He's decided it's time to finally get Kirkwall to clean itself up, and he's going to take over. And this whole thing results in all-out war and chaos. And this is one of the coolest moments in the entire game where everything has gone to hell. Kirkwall is on fire, and Aveline, who is now captain of the guard, your oldest friend pretty much, she's like, I need your help. I'm the captain of the guard. I need your help to go put a stop to this Arashok who's starting to destroy stuff. It's crazy out here. And then this is when Isabella also comes up to me and is like, hey, come talk to me. I got something that's more important going on that may be able to help solve this whole Quinari situation we got going on. So I go talk to Isabella, and Isabella, turns out, she had mentioned way earlier in the game how she came to Kirkwall, how she was shipwrecked here. And it turns out it's because she had stolen something that the Quinari hold very, very special to them. Some sort of book. I honestly don't remember what it was called, but they have this book that is very sacred to them, and she stole it from them, and she's the whole reason why the Quinari ended up in Kirkwall, because they know that it's somewhere here and they can't leave without it. Something about honor and traditions that forbid them from leaving without first getting that book back. And it's this whole thing where this whole time I've been flirting with Isabella, and she kind of just throws this on me, and it's just like, so you're the reason why the Quinari are up in arms about everything. And it's just like, I mean, yeah, technically, but listen, they would have killed me, you know? So it's a whole thing where we track the book down from some of the other enemies that Isabella had made along her journeys in Kirkwall, and we are able to track down the book. But Isabella runs ahead and goes after it without me and the rest of the party, and it results in one of the most heartbreaking moments I experienced in a game in a long, long time, where Isabella leaves the party to go get this book, and then we chase after her. I hope to God that she didn't just run away with this, because I made it very clear to her we are going to give this back to the Qunari so that they can stop attacking Kirkwall. But she was very much like, no, we should just take this and go. And so when she charged off ahead of us with the book, I was like, oh no, is she gone? Did I just lose her? And then we chase after her and we see a note that she left where she's like, yeah, sorry, I'm out of here. Sorry I lied to you again. And it's just like, dang. This whole time, Isabella's been like my favorite character. Like I already mentioned, in terms of combat, she's been decimating the field like crazy. And in terms of character, she very much appears as if she's just eye candy. But the more you talk to her and the more you learn about her, the more I just like really like her as a character, you know? And after Hawk's mother died, she came to Hawk and, you know, made sure she was doing okay. It was just like really nice moments with Isabella that just made this part really like blindside me. And then it's just like we go back to Aveline, we're like, yeah, she's gone. And the Arishok has taken the Viscount hostage with a bunch of people in the Chantry, and it's just like we gotta go stop him. We gotta go talk to the Arishok. Also worth mentioning, during the Arishok's attack, it's when we're really fully introduced to the first enchanter, Orsino, and we meet the Knight Commander of the Templars, Meredith. And they're also here to back me up. They're butting heads a little bit along the way to the Arishok, but overall they're like, okay, we understand that we have to work together to stop the Arishok. We have bigger fish to fry, that sort of thing. And it's a really cool moment because as Bethany had recently joined the Circle of Kirkwall because Cullen essentially kidnapped her, we get to reconnect with Bethany for a little bit, and it's a really cool moment. And so we march up to the Arishok, and it's really bad. He had just murdered the Viscount. And it's just like, I don't know if we can peacefully resolve this. And he's talking to me, all yelling at me. The Arishok has made it very clear that he is no longer giving us any options. It is his way or death. Honestly, it's his way or death. And it's not looking good until the most amazing moment. A shocking moment that I should have seen coming because it's very by the numbers in terms of storytelling, but it just really took me by surprise. Isabella came back with this book, and Isabella's like, here it is right here. This is what you needed, right? And she's like, here you go. And it's just like, awesome. I'm like, Isabella, I'm so happy to see you. I can't believe you're back. And she's like, you know, this is because of your influence. And I'm like, that's crazy. It's those little things like that. These moments are what make Bioware games so special to me, where depending on your choices earlier in the game, it decides whether or not Isabella will return or whether she'll stay away and just be gone from your game. I don't actually know for certain what happens depending on your choices. I don't know if someone just finds her and drags her in, or if she only returns on her own accord. But in that moment, it very much felt like a reflection of my choices of being more of a quote-unquote righteous character and rubbing off on Isabella in a way. Where I feel like if I played the game in a more scummy way, maybe Isabella would also have been more scummy and would have left. I don't know for certain, but because of the way I played, it felt like a direct result of the way I was playing. And that was really awesome. And so now that Isabella's here, the Arishok is like, all right, we'll leave. But we're taking her with us because she stole it and we don't tolerate thieves. I was like, no way. That's crazy. I'm not letting you take her. We almost had peace. You should have given peace a chance. But now he's like, no, I'm going to take her because we got to. And I'm like, nope, not going to happen. Then he's like, all right, let's duel. And then we duel. And then we duel. I might cut that out or leave it in. And I win very easily. I didn't die the first time I fought him. It was super easy. I will say this when it comes to the combat versus Origins' combat. You can't spam health potions, which does make the combat more difficult as a result because you can't just keep spamming yourself to full health. You actually have to be more tactical about it. So that another bonus to the combat. Now that that's all over and done with, that ends Act 2. And now we are into Act 3, where the most padding happens in the game, where the tensions between the mages and the Templars of Kirkwall are at an all-time high, with First Enchanter Orsino there and Knight Commander Meredith just like always arguing openly in some cases. And things aren't looking good. Things aren't looking too good whatsoever. Both Orsino and Meredith send you on pretty lame quests just to like garner more sympathy to either of their causes. It felt pretty unnecessary to me, in my opinion. First Enchanter Orsino and Knight Commander Meredith argue so much to the point where one of our companions, Anders, just goes, hey, you guys both suck. Orsino, you aren't helping the mages enough. And Knight Commander Meredith, you suck a lot because you're really making the mages live like slaves, and it's terrible. And since no one around here is really doing something about it, I will. And then he blows up the chantry, and it's insane. And with that explosion of the chantry, it pretty much sends the mages and the Templars into a full-on war between these two factions. And this has ramifications across the entire world of Thedas. This isn't just a little thing that Kirkwall feels. This is a global catastrophe, which is pretty insane to think of where this game started and where the game goes to the point of affecting the entire status quo for Thedas. It's pretty crazy. You now need to decide whether you're going to back the mages or back the Templars. And as we all know, Cullen is a Templar. And so I'm not going to back the Templars because that would mean siding with Cullen, and I hate that dude. And also the Templars really do suck because they really make the mages live like lesser than, which is very much evident by everything that Cullen has said throughout this game. At one point he talks about the mages as if they aren't even human, and then he's like doubling down if they're an elven mage. It's wild. This dude really sucks. Like, he sucked in Origins, but he goes completely off the deep end in Dragon Age 2. I'm really making it sound like he's the main antagonist of this game, and that's not the case. That's not the case at all. And as I side with Orsino, I help him and the other mages. But despite me being his ally, he decides to turn to blood magic and becomes a giant abomination who I have to kill. Weird, I know. But this last segment is also really cool because it does bring Bethany back into the party, where I mentioned way earlier in Act 1, Cullen takes her away to join the circle. Now that there is full-on war between the mages and Templars, Bethany is back along your side, and it just feels so good to have her back. You know, it just feels good. It's a really fulfilling moment. But after that, we then run into Knight Commander Meredith, who has a sword made out of red lyrium. And that red lyrium, of course, is that artifact all the way back from Act 1 that Bartrand had, and he had sold. He sold it to a Meredith, who has been corrupted by that red lyrium over time. So where she started this game as a pretty not good person, she is ending the game as an even worse version of that. We beat her ass, and this is when Cullen goes, okay, you know what? Maybe the Templars weren't a great idea. And then we kind of all just look at each other, and then we go, all right, see ya. And then the game ends. And then we do get the present day thing with Cassandra and Varric. Varric's like, I don't know where Hawk is now. And Cassandra's like, all right, you're free to go. I appreciate you for telling me the story. And then she leaves Varric in that room, and outside, she's greeted by none other than Leliana herself. And then they're just like, yeah, don't know where Hawk is. That sucks. That's what we're hoping to find Hawk for some reason. We don't know what that reason is just yet, though. And then the game ends with just the kick-ass song by Florence and the Machine, I'm Not Calling You a Liar. And I can't play it now because I would get copyright striked, but it is such a great song that I've listened to so many times over the past 10 years. And that is the story of Dragon Age 2. And when all is said and all is done, Dragon Age 2's story really does go places. It starts off as if it is just, hey, you're just hanging out. But the places it goes and where it ends, it really does solidify itself as a proper full entry in the Dragon Age franchise. And with the Overdue review now done for Dragon Age 2, we look towards the future. Not to the Veilguard just yet, but to Dragon Age Inquisition, which, of course, gotta replay that as well. I don't know how long that video will be, because that game is longer than both Origins and Dragon Age 2. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I get that video out in time before Dragon Age The Veilguard, because that game is massive. Massive. So we'll see how that goes. And if you want to be made aware of when that does happen, make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you made it to this point in the video, I'm sure you like the content enough to want to subscribe. I wouldn't even have to persuade you in any way. You kind of just feel like it, you know? And especially if you made it this far, hit the like button. It really helps. It helps with the algorithm. So does commenting. I should have said that earlier. I feel like I always say that at the end of a video. I definitely need to get better at saying comment and like for the algorithm earlier in the video, so people do, because I understand how people's watch time works. Not everyone makes it this far, but if you did, I truly appreciate you. And until the next video, as always, stay safe and play some video games.